Welcome. Today we are on the campus of beautiful Bayview Association, and I am looking straight ahead at Hall Auditorium, which would be the location of the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra Beethoven 9 concert, which we would be performing in a couple of days, but of course that performance has been canceled. But it's wonderful to be here anyway, and to be this close to Hall Auditorium and to be on Bayview. And I'm excited to welcome today Maureen Delaney-Lehman, who is the orchestra librarian. And so we're very pleased to have an opportunity to talk with her today. Maureen is a multi-talented woman, and she started piano at a very young age, and then I believe in 5th or 6th grade she took up the flute, and through college continued with flute, expanded to organ, received a Bachelor's of Music Ed degree from Western, and then went on to a library science degree in a master's program. Maureen, I know that you spent some time in the UP, so tell us a little bit, what did you do after college and how did you end up in the UP?
Okay, well, I got the education degree, as you mentioned, and I did teach music, K through 6 for 5 years. But I had decided that's not how I wanted to spend the rest of my life. So I was, as a lot of young people are, they're kind of just don't know what to do, so they're kind of into adventure. And since I love the outdoors and actually had gotten a master's in environmental conservation education, I worked—
That's a mouthful.
Yes. I worked in the Keweenaw Peninsula for 3 summers at Fort Wilkins State Park. So that's what got me to the UP. And finally, I decided to become a librarian when someone said, "Why don't you become a librarian?" And I thought, well, why not? So that's what got me there. But I should say that all along, wherever I've lived, and it hasn't been that many places, but I've always been involved in music. Whether it was playing flute in the Symphonic Wind Ensemble, which was when I lived near Flint, or singing in the Lexington Singers when I was living in Lexington, Kentucky. And just music has been so much a part of my life.
Right. Well, and you are a wonderful musician, and we're thrilled to have you as a musician in the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra. But right now, we're primarily have you here to talk a little bit about what it means to be an orchestra librarian. Now, when that music finally rolls off the printer and it's time to have that music be in front of the orchestra on the music stands, it really is the librarian, correct me if I'm wrong, Maureen, but it's really the librarian that makes sure that the right music is in the right place at the right time. And so your job encompasses even so much more than that, with negotiating rental fees and communicating with publishers and all of that. So can you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you actually do?
Yes. It does sound simple in many ways, and maybe that's why I agreed to do it when I was asked to do it back in 2015. I said, oh, sure, why not? And
okay.
It was very tricky. It was a different type of librarian than I had been before in my career. But I have come to like it very much. And the challenges are part of it. Basically, as Judy has said, it's really in a nutshell is you obtain the music, you distribute it to the musicians, and then you pick it up and return it afterwards. But that's the simple part of it. We obtain our music in 3 ways. Either we have it within our catalog itself, within our library. We might purchase it. We also borrow it if we can, or sometimes, or I should say most of the time, we actually rent it. And when you rent the music, it can cost anywhere from $30-some to several $100s. Depending on
per piece?
Per piece. Yes. So this might be one of 4 or 5 pieces in a concert. And it depends upon what type of copyright restrictions. Of course, the composers have to be paid their royalties. And most of these very expensive ones are the more contemporary ones. There are some pieces that we can obtain absolutely free, and that's also a good thing too. But at any rate, that's the procuring of it. And I do have to watch out to make sure that sometimes there's more than one edition. So I have to make sure that we're getting the edition that Libor wants. Or occasionally, a piece might have instruments that we don't normally have or we don't normally use. And again, I consult with our maestro to see if what we need to do about that. Sometimes he'll consult a score, a conductor's score, and say, well, this part that we have here can double that part, and so on. But yeah, and then I got the music to the musicians, usually mailing it. And that's another pitfall, because I remember the trip we took to Iceland, and we had been there 2 days when it was either an email or a call that I got that said, oh, so-and-so didn't get the music for the concert that's just around the corner. And I'm going, I'm in Iceland, what can I possibly do about it? I'm sure that Bob Pattengale came to the rescue with that. But, you know, those are the things. And then finally, everybody has the music, we've got the concert, as long as they didn't forget to bring the music with them, which has happened too. And then one is scrambling around trying to see if there's a digital copy somewhere or whatever. But then just getting the music back. I try to collect all the music at the end of the concert. Sometimes people, without thinking, just put it in their case and take it home. And that's no big problem, except that we might have to return that music to the publisher in 5 days. And
you have some deadlines sometimes?
We definitely have deadlines, depending on, I should say the distributor, depending on who the distributor is. Because the other thing I have to do before I can mail it back is to erase all the extra pencil markings that the musicians might have put in. So there's just, you know, these little nitpicky things that are there, but, you know, every job has its little parts.
Right,
like that.
and when you think of the orchestra, I mean, there's all the strings, violins, viola, cello, bass, there are the wind players, the percussion players. I mean, this is all of the music for the orchestra. So you have to know, obviously, before you order, what the orchestration for that particular piece is.
Yes.
And that could vary between different pieces in the same concert, correct?
Right. Well, and we actually had a question about a piece that we're planning to do next year, a Copland piece that is arranged 2 different ways. One is for chamber orchestra, which is basically what we have. One is for full orchestra, and the instrumentation is so much larger. So I had to have that clarified by Libor. Which one are we doing?
Right. All little details.
Yes.
My goodness. So, you know, here we are, obviously in very much a part of a new digital online world. You mentioned something before about maybe if a musician forgot their music and there might be a way for you to get it digitally online. How is that working? How are you responding to that?
Yes. Basically, right now, the only way I can do that is if the music is actually public domain, and it's on this one website that we use to obtain music that is downloadable. Otherwise, I'm kind of up a creek. But that's something that I'm looking at for the future. There are a number of musicians now who are using their iPad to play the music digitally.
Yes.
That is, they're reading their score off of that rather than getting the hard copy. Right. And at this point, I would like to see, I guess, first of all, not everybody would necessarily be on board for that, and I don't think that you need to have a whole orchestra looking at their iPads at this point. But what would be good for me and for everybody, actually, is to be able to send them the music digitally for rehearsing, and then to actually pass out the hard copy at the rehearsal. That way, I know whoever is playing is getting their music. Because we've had instances, well, it happens more often than you would think, where someone is planning on playing, they have the music, for whatever reason, they have to drop out. Well, then they have the music. How is that music going to get to the other player? And usually it happens smoothly, but generally it's, you know, it can be problematic. And as a musician myself, I appreciate getting the music as fast as possible. I don't want to spend a lot of time.
Right.
So that would eliminate that problem right there, if we were able to at least give them rehearsal music that way. But it also involves talking with the distributors about this, because I'm sure there's some copyright issues involved with this. But it's also something that I think that they are dealing with now because of many, many other people doing this sort of thing.
Sure.
So it's certainly
Sure.
something that is going to be happening more in the future,
Right.
and new policies will have to be made, and hopefully we
Right.
can be a part of that.
Right, exactly. And I would imagine that you are collecting music and returning music, and you know there's a little bit of stress and pressure when you're mailing rental music. What happens if we don't return rental music?
There's a large fee to pay.
Okay.
And that's what happens when people lose their music, which happens too. I mean, you pay for that, their particular piece.
Right.
Actually, the distributors always say to, when you're returning it, you return it so that it's signed on delivery, it's traced, and also you insure it. So there would be, I mean, we might have to insure it for $500 or something. So we
Sure.
wouldn't be out as much as what it actually costs to replace it.
Right.
What really makes me nervous is when I get a piece of music and the publisher puts a yellow or a pink slip in there that says, this is out of print, and do not lose any of, you know, if you lose one copy of this, that's $100. It's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And part of this is just because I'm a very particular person and I like things well organized, and I like to make sure that we have a good name.
Yes.
So,
Yes. And you are a perfect librarian, Maureen. You truly are. So, in your career with us, with GLCO, what is the most you've paid for rental for a piece of music? Do you remember what it was by any
well,
chance?
not exactly. It
Sure.
was certainly in the 700s.
Okay.
I don't think we've had to pay 800 yet, or that could be possible.
So
Yeah.
there is a wide range, isn't
Well,
there?
yes, and part of that is because when you rebroadcast it, or when you actually broadcast it, you have broadcasting fees. If you broadcast it beyond, I think you have maybe 2 weeks within the time of the concert, or maybe a month that you can broadcast it for free. Otherwise, you pay an extra, I don't know, $100. Last year, when we did The Mask of the Red Death, which had choreography in it, that was a whole separate fee right there,
Oh, really?
because you were doing staged choreography.
Oh, my goodness.
So, you know, everything layers onto it, so.
Right. And now, of course, we have added our GLCO in concert. So we are reaching back to our archival recordings and presenting them on our website and our e-blast and things. So I know you are doing some work for us, thank you very much, in looking at what these rebroadcasting fees might be. Typically, if we own a piece of music, then
It should be covered, because we do pay annual fees to 2 organizations that
Yes.
take care of royalties, so we are actually paying something. It's just these other companies that require their own separate rental fee to be paid, usually in the case of contemporary composers, as I said.
well, if you think that Maureen looks familiar, she does, because you see her in the orchestra, and particularly during Messiah, you
Yes.
usually are playing harpsichord. And so Maureen remains an active musician also in GLCO, playing keyboard. And one other little secret I think we can share, maybe not such a secret, is that Maureen also has a beautiful singing voice, and she has performed in a number of theater productions, and we are able to enjoy her voice quite often here in the Harbor Springs and Petoskey and Charlevoix area. So, my goodness, Maureen, you have a varied background, certainly musical. And what are there anything else that you would like to pursue?
Oh gosh, I don't think so. At one time, I would love to have been a jazz pianist and thought I should really learn how to improvise. But I thought that's what I'm going to do when I retire, but instead I took voice lessons.
Okay.
Because I hadn't had voice lessons prior to that time. But, you know, my life is so full here in Petoskey, and there are so many joyful things to be a part of musically. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing, and we're getting of an age where someday the voice is going to go sooner than I want. I'm already having arthritis in my fingers, you know, so I'm just going to do what I enjoy right now while I can.
Right, and go with the flow. You're
Right.
also very much an outdoors person.
Yes.
I know that you and your husband bike and hike and walk and all of those things, and this of course is such a beautiful area for that.
It is.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us for this Tuesday talk and giving you a little sneak peek insight into the orchestra, what happens behind the scenes of the orchestra. And for many of us, maybe we didn't even realize that there was the position of orchestra librarian and really what she does. And believe you me, I rely very much on Maureen and her expertise and her talents, and she brings a wealth of background to the orchestra and makes things run very smoothly. You sit in the audience and the orchestra members, the musicians are on stage and they're warming up and playing lines from a piece of music, and there's lots of things that happen to make all of that work smoothly, and Maureen is very much a part of that, making sure, like she said, it's the right music at the right time in the right place. So Maureen, we thank you so much for being with us here today on Tuesday Talks, and thank you for being GLCO librarian and also for being an active and wonderful musician with the orchestra.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be a part of it, and I love the staff.
Thank you.